Texas Dealer Records. All records must be maintained and easily accessible to the Texas Department of Motor Vehicles personnel by anyone that holds a Texas Motor Vehicle Dealer's license. All records, including retail and wholesale transactions, must be kept for a minimum of 48 months. That's 4 years. All current records and records from the previous 13 months must be kept at the licensed dealership location. Records that are older than 13 months can actually be stored at another location other than the dealership. You may not store the previous 13 months records at an off-site location. They must be stored at the dealership. Federal law requires some records, such as the Federal Trade Commission Buyer's Guide we'll talk about here in a little while, and some odometer disclosure statements, to be kept for a period of 5 years. So everyone, when you're starting your dealership, you're going to be starting a very extensive paper trail when you gain your Texas Motor Vehicle Dealer's license. The most important piece of office equipment that you're going to need with your new business is going to be a copy machine or a scanner. You're going to create and store copies of every document relating to the purchase and sale of every single vehicle. If you're thinking about throwing away a document that relates to the operation of your dealership, well, don't throw it away. You want to make a copy of it. Records can be kept in electronic format or hard paper copy. If you're storing your records electronically, it is imperative that you have multiple backups. If all your records were stored on only one computer and that computer's hard drive fails, then you would not have your records and you would not be compliant with the law. So make sure you have multiple backups if you're storing electronically. Records like the names, address, dates, VINs, etc. may be kept in a database, and no paper copy is required if they are available for inspection and if you're capable of printing these up for inspection by an MVD representative at the dealership during normal business hours. Original vehicle titles in the possession of a dealer that aren't being held by a lien holder should be kept in a secure location, like maybe a locked file cabinet or something like that. If the original title is being kept by a floor planner, then the dealer is going to be required to keep a copy of the front and back of the title at your dealership location. Texas retail motor vehicle dealers are required to keep, at minimum, the following records, either via paper or electronically, for all vehicles purchased, leased, and sold. I'm going to go right down the list here. Most of these documents we are going to cover extensively later on in the course. But on every transaction, you'll need that retail installment agreement or sales contract or bill of sale, which we covered a moment ago, which are always going to include the date of the sale, the vehicle description with year, make, and model, that vehicle identification number, make sure that's correct, the name and address of the person purchasing the vehicle, the sales price, all other fees and charges that are the total cost of the vehicle, including any type of trade-ins, payoff of trade-ins, extended warranties, insurance, etc. You're going to have a copy of the application for Texas title that is filled out and signed by the buyer and seller. And this is a form, it's called Form 13-U. So we're going to cover this form extensively and in depth later on in the course. This form can be obtained by the tax collector's office or your local VTR office as well. And a copy of this form is going to be shown in the manual here in just a little bit. A tax collector's receipt for the title application, which is what we call the white slip. This is an important document that's going to prove that you did apply for a title for any vehicle that you have sold. You'll also need a copy of the Federal Trade Commission Buyer's Guide, which sometimes we call the as-is statement. We've got a whole section that will go in depth into that document later on. Odometer disclosure statements are going to be required. A copy of the front and back of the title signed by the buyer and seller, and also any power of attorney that you might have to have that's used to complete the titling process. And we'll learn more about that in Chapter 6 when we cover titling vehicles. VTR Form 136, which is the county of title issuance, in which your customer is going to elect in which county they desire to have their vehicle registered in. So we've got a whole section on that doc later on in the course as well. Other forms, copies of other forms that may be necessary to title the vehicle, depending on the type of the sale, are going to need to be kept as part of the dealer's records. Most of these forms can be obtained by your tax assessor collector's office or your local VTR office at your vehicle titles and registration office or on their respective websites. And we have several copies of these later on in the book. VTR forms can be found on the DMV website. Forms involving taxes may also be obtained from the State Comptroller's Office website, and that's going to be window.state.tx.us, and also the dealer's reassignment of title for a motor vehicle form, which is called VTR-41A. We'll show you that here in a little bit. And that should be used if all available assignments on the back of a Texas title are signed, or if the negotiable title is from another state or even a foreign country. Texas Motor Vehicle Sales Tax Exemption Certificate for any vehicles that are taken out of state, and those will be used when someone is claiming to take the vehicle out of the state, or whether that vehicle is wholesale or retail. So that form would even be filled out if you're selling a vehicle to another dealer that's in another state. So we'll cover Form 14-312 extensively later on in the course. So I'm just kind of giving you an overview of some of these at the present time. The original must be kept with the sales, and you're also going to file a copy of that with the comptroller's office. And since dealers are required to apply for vehicle titles, this is a form that basically proves the consumer was advised that the selling vehicle was leaving the state. Texas Motor Vehicle Finance Sales Tax or Surcharge Report. So this is Comptroller Form 14-17, which must be filed with all seller financiers. So if you're doing any type of buy here, pay here, or other types of financing, that form is available on the comptroller's website as well, and we will cover that form extensively later on in the course. All wholesale motor vehicle dealer transactions must keep at minimum the following records, either via paper or electronically, for wholesale vehicles sold, purchased, and leased. So you'll have a bill of sale, auction receipt showing the date of the purchase along with the VIN, the name and address of the seller, and the mileage statement. A photocopy of both sides of that title after the reassignment has been made. So no matter what, you're always going to be making copies of the front and back of all titles. You would have to have a separate odometer disclosure statement if there is no odometer disclosure integrated into the title. The Texas Motor Vehicle Sales Tax Resale Certificate has to be filled out on wholesale sales and would be signed by the buying dealer and kept in both buying and selling dealer sales files. We'll talk about that form here in a little while as well. Do not send the completed certificate to the comptroller. So when the state comptroller audits your records, the auditors going to want to see this form in your records. So that's available from the state comptroller's office as well. The following records for consignment sales transactions must be kept. And a consignment sale is when you have a person's vehicle on your lot and you're trying to sell it. Before we talk about this, I want to make sure that you're aware some insurance companies do not allow motor vehicle consignments for dealers. So if you're ever thinking about consigning a person's vehicle for sale on your lot, the first thing you want to do is ensure that your insurance company allows that. And some insurance companies may require you to pay for an additional rider. So make sure if you're ever considering doing consignments that you check with your insurance company first to ensure that they allow that. And if they do allow that, consignment records would include a written consignment agreement for the vehicle, or maybe a power of attorney that covers that vehicle. A written consignment agreement should be completed by the licensed dealer, and that would also be made part of your sales files, which sometimes we call the deal jacket. A copy of the title should be at the dealer's licensed location for inspection by the buyer or any type of MVD representative. It is recommended that a copy of the title also be attached to the consignment agreement. You know, other record requirements for the actual sale of a consignment vehicle are exactly the same of those as a retail sale. So in addition to the records that are required to be maintained under Texas law, you are also required at minimum to maintain the following records under federal law. And I want to remind you, state law comes out of Austin, federal law comes out of Washington. And we're going to cover a lot of these in greater detail later on in the class. So 5 years, you'll be required to keep the following documents: copies of your Federal Trade Commission Buyer's Guide for every vehicle sold, copies of IRS Cash Reporting Form 8300 if applicable. We'll cover that extensively later on as well. Odometer disclosure statements for any vehicles that aren't covered under Texas law. A written Federal Trade Commission red flags policy. So we'll show you how to develop a red flags policy in writing later on in the course. That is part of federal law, a federal law requirement. Copies of any forms related to Truth in Lending Act, Equal Credit Opportunity Act, or the Gramm-Leach-Bliley Privacy Act, which we will cover all those acts extensively when we delve into financing later on in the course. Office of Foreign Asset Control filings are also as well. So always make sure that you make copies of front and back of every single title. So make front and back copies of every single one of the titles as soon as you take possession, and also when you have done reassignment. So do please be aware of that. Also, as you see on your screen here, inspection of records by Texas Department of Motor Vehicle Enforcement investigators and MVD personnel. Your records must be kept ready to produce for inspection by a Texas Department of Motor Vehicle investigator or MVD personnel at all times. So the Texas Occupations Code specifically allows the Department of Motor Vehicles to inspect the books and records of a licensed motor vehicle dealer in connection with the performance of its duties under the law. An investigator may show up to your dealership location and expect to see the records there, or an MVD may request copies of the records by certified mail. If a dealer does not respond to the certified mail request within 15 days or provide the records as requested at the dealer's lot, a civil penalty or suspension or revocation of the license may be imposed. So everyone, by having a Texas dealer's license, you are given the Texas Department of Motor Vehicles the right at any time to inspect your records with no notice. So the Texas Department of Motor Vehicles Board may issue a subpoena if the records are not produced with inspection within 15 days of that request. During a records inspection, the Texas Department of Motor Vehicle investigative personnel may arrive unannounced during your posted hours of operation. If either an owner, partner, or a licensed salesperson is not staffing the dealership during the posted hours of operation, an administrative board action could lead to the suspension or revocation of your dealer's license. All records must be available for reasonable inspection within 15 business days of the request. Remember, your dealership must be staffed during the posted hours. It is Texas law. So always make sure that you have all records a minimum of 4 years. That's 48 months. So previous records before 13 months can be stored at an off-site location as long as it's in the same county as your dealership. All records from the past 13 months must be stored at your licensed location only. Like I said, this is Texas law, okay? The Texas Department of Motor Vehicle Board. We definitely need to be aware of this board. This is a board that I'm going to explain to you that has oversight over our industry, and they meet in Austin. But the Texas Department of Motor Vehicle Board conducts hearings at least 4 times a year. Sometimes they'll do it more than that if they need more frequency, depending on the current needs. So what the Texas Department of Motor Vehicles Board does is they review, approve, and rescind new rules. So the Texas Department of Motor Vehicles Board consists of 9 members, and it is actually a part of the Texas Department of Motor Vehicles. The 9 members are appointed by the Texas governor, and then they have to go through a really extensive Texas Senate confirmation process. So they've got to go through quite a few hoops and hurdles to actually land a position on the Texas Motor Vehicle Board. The governor selects 1 member of the board to chair the board, and the other members of the board elect the vice chair of the board. Texas state law requires 3 members of the board to be licensed motor vehicle dealers. 2 of those dealers have to be brand new franchise dealers, and then 1's going to be an independent non-franchise dealer like us. So the board has to have 1 used motor vehicle dealer, and the board's also going to include 1 member that's a representative of, say, a franchisor or manufacturer. 1 member of that board has to be a tax assessor or collector. State law says 1 member must be a law enforcement officer from a city or a county. And 1 member must be a representative of a motor vehicle carrier industry. 2 members are going to be from the general public. So it is a very diverse makeup that is written in state law, how it has to be made up. And each member is going to serve 6-year staggered terms. The board is going to oversee and coordinate the development of the department, and is going to try to ensure that all components of the motor vehicle industry function as a system. The board considers which ways the department's operations may be improved and may periodically report to the legislature concerning potential statutory changes that would improve the operation of the department. The board also approves rules that are required under recently passed legislation. So when the legislature passes a new law, many times the board will have to approve and write rules to comply with that new law. So you can view the board schedule at any time at texasdmv.gov/about-us/texasdmv-board-meetings. You'll see that website link right there in your dealer training manual. Remember, as a licensed Texas motor vehicle dealer, you'll need to be aware of the important functions of this board, and their actions affect the operation of every Texas motor vehicle dealership. So they meet at least 4 times a year in Austin. If you ever have a chance to attend a board meeting or watch a board meeting online, you're going to find it is very educational, and they always post the board meetings well in advance. So if you can't make it to Austin to actually view one of these in person, definitely take a look online. You'll find it's very informational, very educational, and they definitely have oversight over our industry. So in Unit 1, we've learned that state law does require you always display your dealer's license. You've worked hard to maintain that. Make sure and display it prominently. We've talked about the important roles of ethics and integrity in operating your dealership. We went over license suspensions. We also gave you a look there at the disciplinary fine matrix and the different divisions of the enforcement division. We showed you how easy it is for a dealer to make a complaint against you, and that it is a state law that we have financial responsibility on all of our demos and all of our service vehicles. So I showed you that retail contract law that requires you have a bill of sale on every transaction. We talked about odometer disclosure and tampering and sales to minors. Remember how important it is to keep dealer records and always be ready for a records inspection. And also we talked about the very important roles of the Department of Motor Vehicle Board. So, I want you to be aware that at any time after the class, you can go right back to texasdealers.com, scroll down to the left there, and you can watch every single one of these videos again. So right now, while you're taking it through the learning management system, you can never fast forward through any of these videos. But after you've completed this training course, you can go right back to texasdealers.com, scroll down to the bottom there, and just click right there on Texas Dealer Videos, and you can watch all these videos again after you take your course at no additional charge, obviously, and you will be able to forward through them at that time. So do please review these videos after class, and that's going to definitely help you with compliance of your dealership.